welfare. Now, let me pick you up directly on that. In your letter, you say, I'm unable to watch passively whilst certain policies are enacted in order to meet the fiscal self-imposed restraints that you think are more distinctly political than good for the country. Those fiscal restraints, what are they? Are you saying there that you are against the benefit, the welfare cap?
Yes. In short, my concern has grown, partly because when the welfare cap was brought in, it had larger margins and it allowed much more flexibility. After the last election, what really troubled me was arbitrarily that welfare cap was lowered, which put us under enormous pressure just to meet the cap, let alone the changes and the cuts that were expected for us on the 12 billion.
What about the general policy of ending this Parliament with a surplus, which is the overarching thing behind all of this, I suppose?
Look, the Chancellor has to make his position clear about what he thinks the economy should be doing. I am a big supporter of the fact that if you don't eradicate the deficit, of course, the people that suffer most are those on the lowest incomes. And the things we're doing to raise taxation, thresholds for those lowest incomes, I'm very supportive of. But the truth is, yes, we need to get the deficit down, but we need to make sure we widen the scope of where we look to get that deficit down and not just narrow it down on working age benefits. And there's a reason for that, because otherwise it just looks like we see this as a pot of money that it doesn't matter because they don't vote for us. And that's my concern. They are people who I want to get into work, and we've done a lot to get them into work to change their lives. But
so
I'm passionate that we do that.
Your case is that the Chancellor is wrong on his overall benefit, his welfare cap. He's wrong on where he's attributing the pain. He's been protecting, as it were, better off voters at the expense of people who are more vulnerable. These are a series of body blows to the Chancellor. Can I put it to you? You just don't like him. He doesn't like you. This has been simmering for years and years and years. There are people saying, you heard them earlier on, this is the beginning of a coup against George Osborne and David Cameron.
First of all, this is not personal. I know people may think it's personal because when you resign, it's personal. It's not personal. I am genuinely frustrated. I have no personal ambitions, Andrew. I have absolutely no personal ambitions. If I never go back into government again, then I will not cry about that. That is not my ambition. I only came into this government, and let me be clear about this. I came into this government because I cared about welfare reform. I'd spent 8 years with the Centre for Social Justice, which I set up, talking to charities and small community groups, trying to figure out why certain communities were so badly off and how could we get them back to work and how could we solve their problems. So everything that I've done has been driven by my desire to improve the quality of life for the worst off. We can debate my policies, we can argue about them, but my motivation has always been about that. And my motive now, without any question in my mind, is that I am concerned that this government that I want to succeed is actually not able to do the kind of things that it should because it has become too focused on narrowly getting the deficit down without being able to say where that should fall, other than simply on those who I think progressively can less afford to have that fall on them.
And in the context of this failed conversation, as it were, inside government, the impression is given that things are run entirely by the Treasury and by Number 10. Jacob Rees-Mogg has effectively said that cabinet government needs to be re-established. Do you think there is a functional problem? I think someone has called them Ant and Dec running the country, and the rest of you, as it were, squeezed out.
Well, I do think genuinely that there needs to be a greater kind of collegiate sense to the way decisions are made. I mean, we just come back to what we were talking about with this benefit changing literally by hour. You know, I wasn't consulted on the Friday about those changes. I didn't know anything about them until media started ringing me up and telling me. This is not the way to do government. All I'm simply saying is, look, I want the Chancellor and the Prime Minister to succeed. I want them to succeed because Britain needs them to succeed. We need to get that deficit down, but we need to get welfare reform going. I simply say
But you're saying also they need to change direction and change the way they run government in order to succeed.
Look, I think that what is in my letter and what I'm trying to say today is, and to colleagues, don't doubt my motive on this. You know, I am not about seeing the Prime Minister depart. I genuinely am not, because if there was a vote on it tomorrow, I would vote for him. And I want the team to succeed as a one-nation team, as a team that I came to join believing that social justice was right at the heart of what they did. We can debate how that's delivered, but we shouldn't debate the fact that what we should be trying to do is not keep bearing down on the same group of people, widen that and talk about sharing that burden a bit more and making sure, therefore, that the reform process can take place without being hamstrung through demands for short-term savings all the time when things don't go right according to the forecast.
Do you think George Osborne would make a good Prime Minister?
Sorry, I missed that question.
Do you think George Osborne would make a good Prime Minister?
I think certainly that if he was to stand and he was selected by the electorate, which is not just me, it is everybody else, that I would hope that he would. But I think the same for almost anybody else. I have no view about anybody to be Prime Minister because the Prime Minister is there at the moment and I have a high regard for him. I understand people may not think that, but my view is the present Prime Minister has done a very good job, but I believe they're losing sight of the direction of travel that they should be in.
To be absolutely clear, all those people who say, you know, in the end, there is a move against Cameron and Osborne by Eurosceptic ministers who are using this opportunity when the party seems a bit fragmented and in trouble to mount a thing against him, and that, you know, Boris Johnson is there in the background. You're saying all of that is piffle.
It's all nonsense, and it's nonsense in what I am about. Let me just say one very brief thing to you. I served in the army because I care about my country and I care about the people who live here. And I came into politics because I care about my country and I care about the people who live here. I do not have political ambition. I would not stand for leader. I would not support somebody who stands for leader at the moment. I am supportive of the Prime Minister. I care for one thing and one thing only. It is that the people that don't get the choices that my children get are left behind. I do not want them left behind. I want them given that opportunity, and everything I've tried to do has been about that. Yes, we can debate some of those things that people didn't like because they're more about the deficit than about welfare reform, but overarchingly, what I am passionate about is getting that reform done so society is reformed, so that we have more of those people who've been left behind, brought back into the sphere and the arena where we play daily, but they do not. That is what I'm about, and what I have been concerned about and raised this time and again is that we are beginning to lose that focus, and I cannot do this from inside. That is my frustration. I believe I have to step out. It's not easy. It's painful to resign. I don't want to resign, but I'm resigning because I think it's the only way I can do this. And
I come right back to the beginning of our conversation, because what is happening at the moment is immoral.
I think it is in danger of drifting in a direction that divides society rather than unites it. And that, I think, is unfair. I'm not in the business of morality and everything else because I leave that to churchmen. I simply say that as far as I'm concerned, the risk is there. We're not there yet, but I want to change that. I resigned. I've cleared away my career, whatever it was. I never thought much about a career. And I've said I would rather campaign to change that. I want the Prime Minister and I want the Chancellor to continue to do that, but to do it for the right reasons. Those are my passionate cares.
Iain Duncan Smith, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. Nothing quiet about that.
I've been getting away with it all my